This is the story of a nurse in Fukuoka, Japan, who used lies, deceit, and brainwashing to relentlessly persuade her fellow nurse friends to murder their husbands. After their husbands' deaths, she collected the insurance money. In June 2001, a woman named Hitomi Ishii turned herself in at the Kurume police station with her mother. She confessed that she had caused her husband's death on March 27, 1999, explaining that she was relentlessly brainwashed and persuaded by another woman into killing her husband. The woman's name was Junko Yoshida, and Hitomi revealed there were two other accomplices as well. Junko Yoshida was born in 1959 in Fukuoka, Japan. Her father was a member of the Japanese Self-Defense Forces, but after retiring, he opened an auto repair shop, which ultimately failed. Junko's mother, originally a housewife, took on temporary jobs and household work around the city to make ends meet. Junko had a younger brother. In the difficult situation of poverty, Junko's father became physically and verbally abusive toward the family. Junko's mother also verbally abused her. Despite this, Junko was intelligent and excelled academically at school. From a young age, Junko was obsessed with money and frequently lied at home and school, believing that lying was not a problem. During high school, Junko lied to all her friends, claiming she was pregnant and needed money for an abortion. Her friends, worried about her, collected money and gave it to her. Junko continued to lie, and just before graduating from high school, she tried the same trick, but her friends didn't fall for it. When the truth came out, Junko was suspended from school for 2 months. Throughout high school, she fabricated many stories about her life and lied about dating popular boys on baseball or tennis teams from other schools. After graduating from high school, Junko entered St. Mary's Nursing School in 1979. There, she met Miyuki Tsutsumi, who had attended elementary, middle, and high school with Junko. Although they weren't friends at the time, they became close in nursing school. At nursing school, Junko also became friends with Kazuko Ikegami and Hitomi Ishii. These four nursing students maintained their friendship until graduation. In 1981, Junko married an older man named Koji Yoshida, and they had 3 children. She was attracted to the fact that her husband's grandmother was very wealthy and that he would inherit her estate. Junko had her husband legally adopted by his grandmother, making him her son. This was part of a plan to inherit the grandmother's wealth. When the grandmother passed away in 1990, Junko's husband inherited her estate as expected. The couple inherited the grandmother's land and property, used it as collateral, and borrowed over 30 million yen in a year, spending money extravagantly. As a result, Junko ended up with a huge debt against this inheritance. 2 years later, Junko and her husband separated, with her husband taking a large portion of the inheritance. Junko and her 3 daughters moved into a luxury condo paid for by her ex-husband. Even after starting work as a nurse in a hospital, Junko continued to lie. She often claimed that she was acquainted with politicians and people in the underworld who were always helping her. Junko boasted that she acted as a middleman between underworld leaders and the people she targeted. She would take money from her colleagues, claiming she paid it to an underworld leader to prevent them from causing problems in her colleague's life. Through these scams, she managed to steal millions of yen. Junko, who had been friends with Miyuki since elementary school, arranged for Miyuki to live in the same condo and take care of her children. Because Miyuki had a very weak personality, Junko was able to control her and make her believe her stories. To further manipulate Miyuki, Junko started a homosexual relationship with her, ensuring that Miyuki would follow her orders more closely. Junko explained to Miyuki that engaging in homosexual relations would result in intelligent children, replenish the amniotic fluid in the womb, and enhance a woman's intelligence. She also fed Miyuki an absurd lie, telling her that she had become pregnant by being with her and that the pregnancy would last much longer than usual, which Miyuki believed. Additionally, Junko made Miyuki dress like a man. Together with Miyuki, Junko had Kazuko and Hitomi, 2 other nurses, live in the same condo building, where the three women continuously cared for Junko's three daughters. Junko also extorted money from the three women through scams and lies. As the manager of Miyuki's salary, Junko made her take out loans in her name, leading Miyuki to accumulate a debt of 1.5 million yen between 1993 and 1994. But it didn't stop there. Junko extorted 11 million yen from Hitomi by fabricating a false incident, 28 million yen from Kazuko over a year, and in 1997, she successfully swindled about 10 million yen from another nurse colleague over a minor mistake. With the money she collected, Junko purchased a luxury mansion in Kurume City and led a lavish lifestyle, but she wasn't satisfied and began plotting how to extort even more money. She decided to target the husbands of her nurse colleagues. On January 23, 1998, Junko set her sights on Kazuko's husband. Knowing that he had committed adultery, Junko used this information to persuade Kazuko to kill him. She told Kazuko that her husband was deeply in debt and that creditors would soon come after the family, convincing her that the best solution was to kill him and use the insurance money to repay the creditors. Junko's plan was to pretend to use the insurance money to pay off the debt while actually keeping it for herself. Junko conspired with her three friends to murder Kazuko's husband, Eiji Hirata. When Eiji came home drunk, Kazuko gave him beer laced with sleeping pills. Once he was unconscious, Junko and Miyuki injected air into his bloodstream using a syringe, hoping his death would be ruled a heart attack. The next morning, Kazuko called the police, reporting that she had found her husband's cold, lifeless body. The doctor who first examined the body suspected a heart attack, but a CT scan revealed air in the blood vessels in the brain. Despite this, the autopsy concluded that Eiji had died of natural causes, and Junko and the three others were not suspected. They received 35 million yen in insurance money, along with 3 million yen in condolence money, and 150,000 yen in a survivor's pension from Eiji's company, all of which Junko kept for herself. Junko then decided to target a second victim, Hitomi's husband. Junko had actually introduced him to Hitomi, so she knew him well. Hitomi had a strained relationship with her husband and was living separately from him. Knowing that her husband was a heavy drinker, Junko decided to exploit this by planting doubts in Hitomi's mind about his fidelity. She fabricated a fictional person named Kobayashi Tamai, who one day called their house and pretended to be grateful to Hitomi's husband, making it seem as though he was having an affair. Kazuko played the role of this fictional person. Junko then told Hitomi that the woman who had been having an affair with her husband had committed suicide and that her family was demanding money. She persuaded Hitomi to kill her husband and suggested that they use his insurance money to settle the issue. Hitomi, deceived by Junko's manipulations, invited her husband to her home on March 27, 1999, under the pretext of having a meal together. She secretly laced the food with sleeping pills and a drug that suppresses breathing. Using a hospital tube, she administered alcohol through his nose. Even though her mother and daughter were sleeping in the house, she calmly took her time, slowly carrying out the plan from 11 p.m. until the early morning. Hitomi's husband, Tsuyoshi Kumon, died from a coma induced by acute alcohol poisoning. The insurance company paid out 32.57 million yen, with which Junko bought a new mansion, letting her mother live in the old one. She even spent 14 million yen to remodel the mansion, but soon felt her funds dwindling, leading her to decide on committing a third crime. Despite Kazuko, Hitomi, and Miyuki constantly helping Junko, taking care of her children, doing household chores, and providing money, she was not satisfied. She had already spent almost all the money received from the insurance of Kazuko and Hitomi's husbands. After targeting Kazuko's and Hitomi's husbands, Junko set her sights on Miyuki's mother. In May 2000, Junko sent Hitomi to Miyuki's house, pretending to be from a detective agency investigating an affair between Miyuki and another person. When Hitomi arrived at Miyuki's mother's house, she attacked her, injecting insulin into her neck and attempting to strangle her. However, Miyuki's mother narrowly escaped. Furious at the failed attempt, Junko demanded a 3 million yen fine from Hitomi for not killing Miyuki's mother. Despite the attack on Miyuki's mother, the police remained unaware of any criminal activity. Even when the troubled Hitomi approached the police, claiming that Junko was extorting money from her, they had no idea of the extent of the crimes. Initially, Hitomi told the police that Junko had acted as a mediator in negotiations with families demanding money after her husband's death. When the police discovered that these families didn't exist and that Junko was the mastermind behind the fraud, Hitomi confessed to murdering her husband. In April 2002, all four women were arrested for the murders of Kazuko and Hitomi's husbands, the attempted murder and robbery of Miyuki's mother, and various insurance frauds. In September 2004, Junko and the other three women were convicted in Fukuoka District Court. Junko was sentenced to death. Her defense team argued that she wasn't the mastermind behind the murders and suffered from a personality disorder, requesting a life sentence instead. However, the judge stated that Junko had played a much larger role than her accomplices and had clearly manipulated them with cunning lies, so the court must impose the death penalty. In May 2006, the Fukuoka High Court upheld her death sentence. Hitomi and Miyuki also confessed to the murders. Miyuki received a life sentence, while Hitomi, who had voluntarily approached the police, was sentenced to 17 years in prison. Unfortunately, Kazuko died of cancer before the verdict was reached. After her appeals were rejected, Junko Yoshida's death sentence was carried out at Fukuoka Detention Center on March 25, 2016. What was astonishing about this case was the way Junko successfully carried out all the lies, manipulation, and fraud before ultimately being caught. The only reason she was caught was due to a conflict with one of the accomplices she had been controlling. This case shocked the entire Japanese nation and was later published as a book and adapted into a TV drama.